Nigeria's inflation rate for the month of September was put at 26.72%, indicating a 0.92% points increase when compared to that of August, which was 25.80%. Looking at the current figures from the National Bureau of Statistics, September 2023 headline inflation rate showed an increase of 5.94% points, which is higher than rate recorded in September 2022, which was 20.77%. The rise is attributed to the increase in some items in the basket of goods and services at the divisional level, including non-alcoholic beverages, housing, water, electricity, gas and other, clothing and more. The inflation rate seems to be on an upward trend. What specifically can be done to control the continuous increase in the inflation rate and the subsequent pressure on the economy? And how can the people manage the situation? Nigeria Today will be seeking answers to these and more as we discuss inflation. I am your carrier, Clinton. Welcome. Now, joining me in the studio to discuss the inflation rate, the current inflation rate, is Adefolari Olamilekan. He's an economic analyst and a development researcher. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thanks for having me.
Also joining us for the conversation is Dr. Tochukwu Okafor. He is an economic analyst and a senior lecturer in Bayes University, Abuja. It's a pleasure. Always a pleasure having you here.
Always.
I will start with you, Olamilekan. These current rise. Now, what are some of the key drivers of Nigeria's, current inflation rate?
I think to look at it critically is to look at the physical measures and non-physical measures, as well as monetary measures and non-monetary measures. What I mean is that factors within this policy of the government from the monetary angle, on the fiscal angle, normally drive inflation. A good one that anybody can quickly point to is the removal of subsidy. Then on the monetary side is the issue of increase in our interest rate. Then underneath all these factors I've mentioned are other issues that collaborate the driving force of inflation in Nigeria. Talk about the issue around insecurity in the country, whereby farmers could not go back to farm. Talk about the logistic costs around transportation of food, product or commodity from where it is being produced to the city centers or where it will be consumed. Then talk about energy costs, then talk about storage facilities. These are all linked factors driving inflation in Nigeria. Although we have other factors that we can quickly point to, talk about holding of those products for period where the price will go up, and also talk about the issues around the importation of certain items to Nigeria to complement the production of certain commodities. Take for instance, when you want to produce items like noodles, they are complementary products that are being imported by the producer, also make it to bring about inflation. Altogether, all these are factors that we can quickly point to as driving inflation in Nigeria.
Dr. Tochukwu, telling you that this is coming as a surprise, I will definitely not be saying the truth, because you have predicted severally. I'm almost about calling you a prophet, because you you always predicted that the inflation will always be going up. But were you expecting it to be this fast? Because the rate at which it's going is rising. It's kind of alarming, don't you think?
Actually, the reality of things, I think finally Nigeria's inflation figures are beginning to inch closer to data integrity, because it's beginning to reflect the true reality of the Nigerian economy. Now, if you look closely, I always talk about lag effect, right? Last 2 months, I tell you is what happened, the impact of the shocks of last 2 months that we feel this month, and the impact of the shocks this month we'll feel next month. Last 2 months, if you look at it ab initio, right, money supply was around 25-27%. Our GDP is 2.5%. Definition of inflation is excess money pursuing excess goods, very few goods. So if we have money supply at 25%, and the GDP is 2.51%. Ab initio, before we start bringing in all the exogenous factors, we're already at 23% inflation. Now, when you start adding all those other factors, you're seeing where we are now. Now we are currently at 35% money supply, and our GDP is still running at 2.5, if not less, because economic realities are things have been moving since then. But if we're looking at it holistically, you look at it from the demand angle and the supply angle, because inflation, forex, MPR, they are all prices, right? And anything that is on the price transmission belt, you have to look at it from the demand and supply to get equilibrium, right? That's what the logical thing is. Now, at this point, if we're looking at it from the demand angle, yesterday, I think the news that has been circulating is that the CBN has lifted the ban, the ban on forex for certain items. Yes. Now, if you look at the long-run impact of that, which a lot of us are not looking at, the infant industries are already reacting aggressively. Okay, I think I'm going ahead of myself.
Yes.
My bad.
So go now. Okay, still on you. You know, Lamileko earlier mentioned some of the factors that are contributing to the increase in the rise in inflation. Now, some economic analysts have advocated a more hawkish stance, under the present CBN leadership. Now, if you remember vividly well, I think in July, there was an increase in the rate to 18.75%. Now, if you're talking about increasing it further, would it not worsen the situation we are in now?
First things we just need to understand that the MPR is very insignificant at this point in time. I just have to say it. Because when you're looking at the MPR, you're looking at the number of unbanked, right? As of 2020, it was 36%, right? Now, by now, it should have increased more than that because of what happened with the Naira redesign. But shifting that aside, MPR is just an anchor rate. The real rate is the rates that which the banks are giving, which is around 30 to 42. Now, agriculture, people that are into agriculture are no more going to take facilities from bank. And at this point, more often than not, you see a lot of people actually trying to do it on their own, and as a result of that, they increase the prices of their goods. And then on top of that, with the removal of this forex ban, right, we are going to see more import, and that's where I was coming. That import is going to be heavy on a lot of these goods, and there will be imported inflation because the devaluation of our currency by more than 80% since 2014 is going to reflect in the prices of most of these goods, and then bad roads, infrastructure.
Okay,
let me just stop you.
Dr. Tochka, I'll have to stop you here. We're going to take a quick break for the conversation. We continue after the break. Just stay with us. What's up?
By now, the thing they go up, come down, go up, come down.
Now, rice bag, they are selling 50,000. December has not come yet. What if December has come? How will we cope up? If now, for just this month of October, this is 17, and a bag of rice being 50,000 naira, everything is cost. If you buy meat of 1,000, 2,000, it's just like 500 naira meat. Everything is cost.
The price is too exorbitant, so that even common man cannot afford it. So, but what can we do? We are still managing.
Everything in the market now has jumped up more than even times 10 of former price. The only thing that government can do now is to do a price control. I think that's the only thing that even increasing of salary doesn't solve the problem, because when they increase civil servants' salary, almost 200 million of Nigeria, how many people are working as a civil servant? So the only way to solve this problem is to do price control.
It's for our collective responsibilities to team up together alongside with the government at the helm of affairs, because it's not a one-man show. It's not government that fixes everything. It's for each and every individual to contribute his own quota, because there's no country that we call our own other than Nigeria.
Welcome back. This is still Nigeria Today, and we are looking at the current inflation rate, and my guests are still here with me. I have two economic analysts in the studio, two gentlemen, by the way. Olamide, you heard the reaction of the people there.
Exactly.
You know, and recently the CBN lifted the ban on forex for 43 items, just like Tuchuku mentioned earlier. So would this help in any way?
For me, it's a ad hoc and cosmetic measurement. So like Tuchuku was trying to quickly give an expository.
I'll allow him to say what he has to say.
You know, when he mentioned we are not looking at the long-term impact of this, then the manufacturing sector are already reacting and just give me a thumb up. These are the people that understand this particular policy deeper than some people very close to the government. Whoever would advise CBN to lift that particular ban at this point in time didn't give them the best of advice. I was even suggesting this morning on the sister station that it would have even been a gradual lifting. Look at those particular items that we know that we have the skills or capital to produce them, and lift those ones, then still allow others that we can produce. Take, for instance, palm oil production in Kogi, in Benue, in Enugu. They are going to die. Talk about furniture. We have a very close furniture industry, very close to here in Abuja, Kubu furniture. And other part of Abuja, another part of the country.
What about toothpick?
Definitely, they are part of it. Then groundnut oil. Then you talk about pharmaceutical products also, although that is there. Then cosmetic. Then what about leather works, leather materials, clothing? All now be giving opportunity for people to go and collect licenses and begin to bring them in. So it's like a cosmetic policy that just want to quickly solve the problem, but create a monster of a problem. Not further from now. And that's what I see about this.
Dr. Tochukwu, you have something to say about this. I know you were about saying something earlier.
I have to agree with him, right? However, what the CBN can do or should have done, and I always say this, they don't do policy impact analysis before they put it out. Well, maybe they did, but maybe it's still in the ropes. What they were supposed to do, you know that Nigeria is a signatory to the CET, that's the ECOWAS collective external tariff, common external tariff, right? And we have bands of 0, 5, 10, 20, and 35. What they can do here is things like rice, cement, the ones that are made in-house, bump those things to 20%. So anybody that is importing, you're bringing more revenue for us. It's a win-win situation. And then you give the infant industries a competitive advantage. And then secondly, for me, again, it's not about the store of wealth per se, it's about the flow of income, right? It's about, so now our reserves are 33 and it's the stock, but what is the flow like, right? Right now oil prices are high. How are we making the opportunity of it? And then a lot of people are saying that we don't give the solutions, but the truth is we are not the ones at the helm of affairs. We can only point, and then they take the action, because the truth is oil prices are high. The main thing is go to fiscal and monetary policy should work hand in hand at this point. Try and work hard to at least reduce oil theft, fix the roads. Once you fix the roads, and then you can reduce insecurity, bring in funds for these specific purposes. When you start doing it at the grassroots level, it starts reflecting at the bigger level. They say tiny drops of water make a mighty ocean. So it's not the big things you do that actually make the change. It's those tiny ones over time that actually make the significant, sustainable change. That's just my own opinion to it.
So Olamide, how can this inflation rate be brought down? How can we bring it down? Because now it's on the increase. The trend is just going high and high. With what Tuchukwu said the other day, if we go by what he said, his predictions, then we are in for probably a shocker in the shortest possible time.
Exactly. I think bringing it down, I don't know whether the government will take the advice, or they will definitely want to listen to us, or want to take some of the
just keep saying, you're listening.
No, we have, before this, the appointment of the new CBN governor, my organization, Political Analytics, asked him that we want critical monetary policies that will look critically at inflation and interest rate. We didn't ask him to go and reduce or take out the ban on forex for all those 43 items. We only asked him to do a review around it. But what do we have? We went and just opened everything. Now, for inflation to come down, Okafor made something very critical. Infrastructure play a key role in supply chain, particularly. Even NBS didn't tell us the inflation rate of food.
No, they did.
The other one was 29. Maybe it's about 33 or 32 now.
It's 30. The food inflation year-on-year basis, the difference was we had
it's 30 now.
It's 30.
30. Yeah. I was even expecting 32.
Last year,
Yeah.
we had 23.34. We had a difference of 7.30%.
Definitely.
That's the food inflation.
Key.
Yes.
Now, the major thing government need to do, I made mention of the problem that we normally have within that circle, energy costs. Our prayer is that the final importer code will come upstream so that it can reduce the pressure in importation of fuel, so that we can have the one that is supplying us locally. Because once that is done, we can have a grasp of that. Then two, gas. NNLG has been producing to sell outside. The price of gas is also part of what is inflation rate that they brought out. How can we ensure that we supply local consumption at least 55% and give the other 45 to but we understand why they are selling it outside, so they can make more dollars. Just like Okafor rightly pointed out, that our reserve have to grow, but we don't know how much they have added to the reserve. It was made mention of 33 billion is in the reserve. The JP Morgan report indicated it was just 3 billion or $3 million US that is there. When before the CBN went and borrowed about 7.6 billion to also show up the reserve and gave it out to the forex market. Now, apart from that, then we also look at insecurity. It's very key. Then storage facilities. Federal government have what they call the 6 area they have the storage facilities. How functional are those storage facilities? You get it? Just 2 weeks ago, a mudu of maize was being sold for 250, but right now it's around 1,100 naira. I don't know what will be by Friday coming market or maybe tomorrow market. So if we don't put all those in place, there's no way we can reduce inflation. Then I know Okafor will definitely want to agree with me. There is also international transmission of prices of goods and services, especially those heavy equipment and items that we don't produce here that are also coming in as a result of global inflation. IMF just concluded, World Bank just concluded their program on Morocco on Sunday, and they said that one of the greatest challenges the world is going to face is high inflation and high interest rate, and for that is very dangerous for the Nigerian economy. So until the government understand all these key aspects of factors that is affecting us and pay attention to infrastructure development, there's no way we can bring down inflation. But if they pay attention to infrastructure development, definitely inflation will come down gradually.
So, Dr. Tochukwu, how can we reduce our inflation rate and translate it to better living for Nigerians? Because at the end of the day, after all the grammar, it's the people on the street we're talking about. We have to be realistic. So how can we make it better for the Nigerian citizen?
So first, I always say this one, demonetize. We have to demonetize, right? Like even if it's temporarily, even if it's 3 quarters, we just have to demonetize.
What do you mean by that?
So demonetize is it's what we were calling Naira redesign. But we have to demonetize. If you noticed, that period, the dollar was stable. For that 3 months, December, January, February, dollar was pegged at that. In fact, as a matter of fact, it appreciated that period. That's one. Two, you notice that at least inflation stayed. It just stayed. Immediately after the removal, it spiked again. So what happens when you demonetize is all those excess money that is outside, that people are hoarding and not putting in the CBN so that monetary policy can work, they become obsolete. And when they become obsolete, CBN has full control again, full autonomy over the system, and then they decide what percentage they can disburse out versus what is in people's hands. But as long as there's a trust deficit between the CBN and the citizenry, nobody is going to put their money back there, especially those that know that they might come for them. So they are going to keep it as a store of wealth and then keep dollars to and be hedging and speculating. And then the second one for me is at the technical level. I think at this point it has to deal with the inflows, right? As at a small analysis, NNPC in the since 2014 usually engage in transactions and oil transactions, right? Before 2020 when they started doing oil swaps. Between 2014 and 2020 they always remit 3 billion to the CBN. Immediately after the swap, I think there was a little scuffle, and then they started giving 10%. That's 300 million. Now, when you see that, that is what the receipts they give, right? See the CBN's requirements. CBN requires 1.8 to 1.9 billion every month to meet its obligations, both debt and whatnot. And then the importers require 4.7 to 4.6 billion every month. So when you do 4.6 to versus plus the 1.9, you're almost at 7 billion versus 300 million. What do you think is going to happen? Naturally, scarcity has already started. Again, ab initio. So when you now can't control even your inflows, right, via oil receipts, which is our major source of revenue, 90%, right, 79% on crude and 11% on gas. So if you cannot control the receipts that come from there, even with your swaps, that is already a crisis. Then the infrastructure. I can overemphasize this infrastructure. As long as the roads, for transporting these goods, you see food inflation was 30% higher than core inflation by almost 8%. As long as you can't control the or curtail or work on the roads, put them on concession, let them bid, put them on auction, let people take over and work on them. But if you know that this is your duty, repair the roads. That's the barest minimum. Repair the roads so that transportation of goods become cheaper. Then diesel prices are also contributing. But if you can at least do one first, then one can now start having a trickle effect on the other. Diesel prices are also contributing to that. And then the transportation cost, and then the bad roads plus insecurity. So when you put all these things together, you see that the basket of dysfunction is actually very maximum. So at this point, it's all about taking it one step at a time. So for me, first demonetize, because as long as there's excess money outside the CBN, you don't have control over the general public.
Okay, if I understand, if I understand what you are talking about, you're actually pointing out, is it the cashless, policy?
I'm talking about liquidity ratio outside the bank.
Yes.
What he's trying to point out is that there is a lot of money outside. So CBN,
which has always been the problem, and the former leadership of the CBN tried to curb that.
The problem with that, too much money outside, is this: many Nigerians don't want to agree that there's too much money outside. You get it, and that's what normally bring the literary meaning of inflation. When somebody says the general increase of price and goods and services, and people say we don't even have the money to buy the thing, so why is the price increasing? You get it? Well, technically, from the economic understanding, there's too much money outside.
Well, it's in the hands of a few.
Definitely. So the reality is that the poor doesn't have the money. Nigerians don't have the money that we are talking about, that Dr. Kafo is now saying demonetized. So the best is that for us to be able to solve the problem, let us do the needful. And he has made mention of it, which is critical infrastructure need to be put in place.
But Olalekan, I'm just, when you talked about demonetization, of course, I mentioned, that was why I mentioned the cashless policy thing. There was a reason why I said that. When that policy came, a lot of people were against it. As a matter of fact, some economic analysts said they should jettison that policy. Of course, some of them said, well, it's a welcome development, but the implementation was wrong.
Good intention.
So, what? I'm kind of confused here.
It was good intention back the execution, because the FMF and the CBN weren't in tune, right? Federal Ministry of Finance had no idea that was even about to happen, and it was like it was just poured on everybody. You don't do that. You sensitize people months before so that they plan and budget. You don't come out absolutely and just drop it, because you're ambushing people. So what you do, you tell people and start sensitizing them 3 months, 4 months before time, so that when you start, and then you don't implement it once, you implement it in phases. And while you're implementing it, people are now on their own taking their money to the bank, because they now know that you have done your own due diligence, and by extension, if they disobey, they are only to blame themselves. But when you do it like you're trying to set people up, you've set the precedence for everybody to argue with you. So that was why I kept saying that time, good intentions, bad executions.
Dr. Tochko, before we go, there's something about the report that I want you to explain to us, because I like seeing light at the end of the tunnel. Now, on the month-to-month basis, on the month-to-month basis, that is talking about the difference between August and September, which of course we're discussing right now. In August we had 3.87%, while in September we had 2.45%, which we saw a decrease of 1.41%. Does this translate to anything meaningful?
Oh, it's still growing. What they mean is it grew at a slower rate.
Oh.
I've always said that. It just increased at a slower rate. Yeah, I've explained this one over and over. So you bought it at 20 naira last week. Now you're buying it at 25 naira. It's still increased, but slower than the 20 naira.
But if we sustain
it, it just, as long as we are doing the right thing. Probably this one might just be because of the adaptation of people to the fuel increase. Cars weren't on the road before. All of a sudden you're seeing cars now. People have started adjusted. You understand? So,
well, thank you very much. That's it on Nigeria Today. I'd like to appreciate Ade Olamilekon. He's an economic analyst and development researcher. Thank you so much
for having me.
The program. And also Dr. Tochukwu Kafo, economist and a senior lecturer at Bayes University, Abuja. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
And thank you for being part of this. Don't forget, Nigeria Today air weekdays at 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can also watch this and other episodes on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. Once again, thank you for watching. I am your carrier, Clinton. Goodbye.